Imagine, if you dare, waking to a chilling reality where the very bedrock of human progress, the relentless, often uncomfortable act of questioning, has not just eroded, but has been strategically dismantled, where the digital cacophony, the dizzying speed of information, and the endless stream of carefully curated narratives have not merely dulled the mind, but transformed it into a docile recipient utterly incapable of true inquiry. This isn't a dystopian fantasy. It's the uncomfortable present, the insidious big lie sold to us as convenience and connectivity. We are not just losing critical thinking. We are being herded into what philosophers now grimly label collective stupidity, a state of intellectual surrender so complete, so pervasive, that the masses embrace shallow thinking, regurgitate prepackaged narratives, and relinquish their mental sovereignty without a whisper of dissent. The architects of this new reality are not shadowy figures in smoky backrooms. They are the visible hands that craft our algorithms, shape our educational directives, and flood our senses with an inescapable tide of data designed to keep us comfortably numb, perpetually distracted, and strategically disempowered. This isn't an accident of progress. It is, as Machiavelli would recognize, a masterclass in control, where the populace, lulled by constant stimulation, forfeits the power of discernment. By the end of this journey, you will uncover a truth so urgent, so transformative, that it will force a brutal reckoning. Will you reclaim your mind from this systemic exploitation, or allow it to be permanently absorbed into the collective unconscious, a cog in a machine designed to operate without independent thought? But before we dive into the abyss, understand this. The path to liberation demands courage, for the revelations ahead will shatter your complacent perceptions and demand a level of intellectual honesty few are willing to embrace. Share this with those who still possess the spark of rebellion, those who dare to seek a truth beyond the manufactured consensus. Let's confront the first uncomfortable truth, one that the system actively suppresses. Real thinking is agonizingly hard. It demands effort, challenges ego, and offers no immediate reward in a world addicted to instant gratification. The modern environment doesn't merely fail to reward contemplation, it actively punishes it. It champions speed, visceral emotional response, and suffocating conformity. And make no mistake, this societal conditioning is not a benign oversight. It is a deliberate, strategic play from the digital overlords whose algorithms meticulously craft your echo chambers, feeding you only what reinforces existing biases, to educational systems that ruthlessly prioritize rote memorization over genuine intellectual exploration. Society is a meticulously designed apparatus, conditioning us away from critical thought. This is the exploitation trap in plain sight. Decades ago, the legendary dissident Noam Chomsky laid bare this blueprint for control. In his chilling analysis of media and propaganda, he articulated how power structures manufacture consent. He warned that when citizens are trained to consume without questioning, to agree without understanding, they become not just easy to manage, but terrifyingly simple to deceive. This is a Machiavellian principle refined for the information age. Critical thinking, once revered as the hallmark of an enlightened citizenry, is now cast as an inconvenient, even dangerous, anomaly. It disrupts the outrage machine, derails online brawls, and dares to interrogate the sacred cows of ideology. To simply ask, but is this truly accurate? Is an act of intellectual treason seen as an attack on identity itself. This perceived danger serves the interests of those who profit from intellectual stagnation. How did we descend into this state of intellectual servitude? The problem, far from superficial, is deeply embedded in the architecture of our modern existence. One of the most potent weapons against critical thought is the sheer information overload we endure daily. Neuroscientist Daniel Levitin grimly observes that the average individual today processes 5 times more information than just a few decades ago. We are relentlessly assaulted by notifications, a torrent of messages, breaking news alerts, conflicting opinions, predatory ads, and incessant updates every waking moment. Our primal brains, designed for survival in far simpler landscapes, are utterly overwhelmed. When the brain is pushed beyond its capacity, it doesn't engage in deeper analysis. It defaults to survival mode, activating mental shortcuts, succumbing to cognitive biases, and gravitating towards groupthink to navigate this unbearable complexity. It ceases to critically evaluate ideas and instead frantically searches for cues from others, peers, influencers, self-appointed authorities. This is the insidious power of social proof, a natural survival mechanism twisted into an instrument of mass manipulation. Think of the viral post, validated by millions of likes and shares, instantly accepted as gospel truth. This isn't the voice of reason. It's a psychological hijack, a shortcut around genuine thought, and it's precisely why collective stupidity spreads like a digital plague. People aren't unintelligent. They are strategically conditioned to follow signals instead of engaging with the demanding, slow process of reason. This conditioning is highly profitable, creating easily swayed consumer and voter blocs. Another alarming symptom of this intellectual decay is the precipitous decline of deep reading. Neuroscientist Marianne Wolf reveals how our very brains are being fundamentally rewired by the fractured, hyperlink-driven landscape of digital media. We skim, we jump, we struggle to anchor our focus on any sustained text. But here's the brutal truth. Critical thinking is an endurance sport. It demands sustained, unbroken attention. You cannot analyze, reflect, or truly comprehend if your attention span is constantly fragmenting, shredded by the next ping or scroll. Ask yourself, when was the last time you read an entire challenging article without reflexively reaching for your phone, without your mind drifting to the next digital hit? When did you last pause after encountering a truly provocative idea, allowing it to marinate in your consciousness rather than discharging an instant, reactive opinion? These once common habits, the very sinews of intellectual strength, are vanishing, replaced by the ephemeral gratification of the immediate. This cultivates a superficiality that leaves individuals vulnerable to complex, long-term geopolitical and economic manipulations. Carl Sagan, that towering intellect of the 20th century, issued a stark prophecy. We live in a society exquisitely dependent on science and technology, in which hardly anyone knows anything about science and technology. His concern wasn't merely about widespread ignorance. It was the terrifying erosion of our capacity to critically evaluate the very systems upon which our survival depends. This vulnerability allows elites to control the narrative around technological advancements, trade agreements, or climate policies without genuine public oversight. In a world drowning in hot takes, ideological warfare, and manufactured certainty, the ultimate act of rebellion is the quiet, defiant assertion of clear thought. But the problem isn't solely technological or pedagogical. It is profoundly emotional. Critical thinking is inherently uncomfortable. It forces us to confront the terrifying expanse of our own ignorance, to deflate our precious egos, and to navigate the agonizing terrain of cognitive dissonance, where our cherished beliefs are brutally confronted by inconvenient new evidence. In a culture that fetishizes certainty, confidence, and tribal identity above all else, this is not just threatening, it is existential. So, instead of thinking, we defend. We retreat into our ideological bunkers, chanting tribal mantras. We cancel dissent. We memorize slogans rather than engaging in the dialectic, the honest, Socratic wrestle with ideas that has forged philosophical evolution for millennia. We are witnessing not merely a decline in thinking, but a deliberate social engineering towards mental complacency and intellectual laziness that serves specific, powerful interests. The consequences are devastating. When people cease to think, they cease to question, and when questioning dies, populations become terrifyingly vulnerable to manipulation, to propaganda, to fear itself. The chilling question, then, is this: who profits when a populace no longer thinks for itself, when it surrenders its intellectual birthright for the illusion of comfort? To unearth the chilling origins of this collective intellectual decline, we must look beyond the superficial symptoms and trace the deliberate evolution of systems designed not to cultivate critical thought, but to brutally suppress it. This is the exploitation trap laid centuries ago, refined with Machiavellian precision for the modern age. Let's begin with the very institution we trust to enlighten our young: the education system. John Taylor Gatto, an award-winning teacher turned radical critic of traditional schooling, didn't mince words. He argued that modern education's true purpose is not to forge independent thinkers, but to create compliant cogs in an industrial and now informational machine. His damning assessment: the truth is that schools don't really teach anything except how to obey orders. Gatto's controversial yet insightful claim was that compulsory schooling, born in the crucible of the industrial age, was meticulously designed not to unleash intellectual potential, but to mold individuals for factory life: predictable, obedient, and utterly non-disruptive. Think about the implications. Instead of being taught the art of thinking, we are dictated what to think. From the earliest grades, children are not evaluated on the originality, depth, or audacity of their thoughts, but on their capacity to memorize and regurgitate prescribed facts. Conformity is celebrated, while genuine curiosity is often dismissed as an unruly distraction. Over time, the message is hammered home with relentless efficiency: follow the rules, color inside the lines, and above all, do not ask too many inconvenient questions. This isn't just a pedagogical flaw, it's a foundational pillar of control, shaping generations to accept rather than interrogate the structures of power, perfectly aligning with Machiavelli's counsel on managing a population. This creates a workforce ready to accept their role in the global economic machine without challenging its ethical or environmental costs. This insidious pattern doesn't miraculously end when we leave the school gates. It intensifies, metastasizing into every facet of adult life: the workplace, the media we consume, even the unspoken social contracts within our friendships. We are subtly, yet powerfully, conditioned to understand that speaking out, challenging consensus, or holding unpopular views carries a tangible cost. The fear of social exclusion, the dread of being labeled difficult or controversial, is often sufficient to silence even our most urgent doubts, our most profound insights. And so, we fall silent. But silence, over time, curdles into complicity. The profound psychologist Erich Fromm, in his seminal work Escape from Freedom, observed this chilling phenomenon. Many people secretly crave the surrender of their freedom of thought. Why? Because true freedom, he argued, is inextricably linked to responsibility, and responsibility can be a terrifying burden. To truly think for yourself means severing the comfortable umbilical cord to external authority. It means you can no longer comfortably blame others for your ignorance. You can no longer bask in the comforting anonymity of the crowd. You must confront the profound, often unsettling, uncertainty of truth itself, stripped bare of all comforting illusions, and that, for the vast majority, is a burden too immense to bear. So, what do we choose? We choose comfort. We choose distraction. We choose the soothing simplicity of pre-packaged narratives over the arduous, complex journey of genuine understanding, and in doing so, we unwittingly become terrifyingly easy to control. This is the ultimate exploitation trap. the voluntary surrender of intellectual autonomy for the fleeting illusion of peace, making us perfect targets for geopolitical maneuvering and economic exploitation as we lack the critical capacity to see the strategic plays unfolding around us. Social media, the digital opium of the masses, has amplified this problem to unimaginable Machiavellian levels. What began as a utopian promise of global connection has devolved into a savage battlefield of opinion wars, endless outrage cycles, and sophisticated algorithmic manipulation. Every platform, every feed, every notification is meticulously engineered to keep your eyeballs glued, your fingers scrolling, your emotions reacting, your wallet open, and your mind anything but thinking. You are relentlessly nudged toward content that confirms your existing beliefs, meticulously encased in a digital echo chamber. You are incentivized to respond instantly, emotionally, and, all too often, with incandescent rage. These platforms don't reward truth. They thrive on engagement. They don't foster understanding. They profit from division. And in the deafening roar of this engineered noise, the delicate, nuanced voice of reason is utterly drowned out. Thoughtfulness appears slow, weak, even irrelevant in this frantic digital arena. Why bother reflecting when a knee-jerk reaction is faster, earns more likes, and secures your place within your chosen tribe? This system is a masterclass in turning individual attention into corporate and political capital, creating a populace incapable of discerning real threats from manufactured outrage. The visionary philosopher Marshall McLuhan, in the 1960 Seconds, foresaw this digital apocalypse. His chilling warning, "The medium is the message," implied that the very way we receive information fundamentally reshapes how we think. Today's mediums don't just convey messages, they indoctrinate us into a mode of thought that values speed over depth, outrage over nuance, and dogmatic certainty over intellectual humility. Even truth itself has become a malleable, distorted commodity in the age of misinformation. What is demonstrably true often becomes irrelevant, eclipsed by what is simply viral. People no longer evaluate the merit of ideas based on verifiable evidence or rigorous logic. They judge them based on how many people agree with them, how many shares a post garners, how many clicks a headline generates. This is the tyranny of the majority in its most dangerous, most insidious form, not merely political, but profoundly cognitive. It's a system where popularity becomes the sole arbiter of reality, and the silent, inconvenient truth is buried under an avalanche of likes, enabling powerful narratives to dominate global discourse regardless of factual basis. So, where do we go from this abyss of manufactured consensus? We begin by asking better questions, the kind that slice through the layers of propaganda and demand real answers, not glib slogans or decontextualized statistics. What precise narratives are you being compelled to believe? Who, precisely, benefits? Economically, politically, geopolitically. From your unquestioning acceptance of these narratives, what unexamined assumptions lie buried beneath your most cherished certainties? How often do you actively seek out genuinely opposing viewpoints, not with the intent to savagely attack them, but with the genuine, radical intent to understand their underlying logic, to genuinely challenge your own? These are not soft questions. They are intellectual grenades, necessary precisely because the antidote to collective stupidity is not merely intelligence. It is profound courage, the courage to be unequivocally wrong, the courage to admit the terrifying vastness of your own ignorance, and to embark on the arduous journey of knowing anyway. Socrates, the ancient champion of relentless inquiry, famously declared, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." This was not self-deprecation. It was a profound invitation. An invitation to cultivate ceaseless curiosity, to maintain an unyielding commitment to questioning, and to embrace intellectual humility in the face of a vast, mysterious, and deliberately obscured world. And yet, today, humility is a forgotten virtue. Certainty is worshipped, often mistaken for wisdom. Arrogance masquerades as competence. Everyone, it seems, has an opinion, but precious few possess genuine understanding. Everyone clamors to speak, but almost no one truly desires to listen. The profound irony is that true thinkers are often quiet, profoundly observant, deliberately reserved. They understand that genuine wisdom doesn't blossom in the noise of argument or the clamor of social media. It grows in silence, in the contemplative depths of sustained thought, in the deep, often painful, engagement with complexity. And this is precisely why critical thinkers are relentlessly outnumbered and routinely ignored in a culture that fetishizes speed, spectacle, and superficiality. The slow, arduous, inconvenient process of thinking stands little chance against the immediate gratification of emotional reaction. But it must not be abandoned, because the moment you surrender your ability to think for yourself, you cease to be free. You become a puppet, your strings meticulously pulled by forces you are conditioned not to see, not to question. And let us be unequivocally clear. These forces are not abstract philosophical concepts. They are brutally real. They are the economic empires that relentlessly profit from your addiction to mindless content, from your attention fragmented and sold to the highest bidder. They are the political power brokers who cynically rely on your knee-jerk emotional reactions, on your inability to discern truth from propaganda, to push their agendas. They are the institutions that depend absolutely on your unquestioning obedience, on your intellectual docility. But the moment you begin to reclaim your mind, everything fundamentally shifts. You become terrifyingly harder to manipulate. You begin to pierce through the carefully constructed illusions. You cease to be a passive consumer of pre-digested ideas and transform into an active, defiant seeker of truth. And in that solitary act, however small it may seem, you ignite a flame, a fire that has burned through the annals of history, carried by philosophers, scientists, revolutionaries, and truth-tellers who stubbornly refused to stop thinking. So, the ultimate question, the one that will define your future, is this: will you do the same? Stay with me, because the true depth of this crisis, the very mechanics of how entire populations are steered into intellectual conformity, is about to be laid bare. We will delve into the treacherous psychology behind collective thinking, revealing why even the sharpest minds fall into these traps, and how the brain can be subtly tricked into accepting what it wants to be true over what is demonstrably true. This isn't just about information. It's about the weaponization of human cognition, a sophisticated form of Machiavellian psychological warfare. We're not done. In fact, the most chilling revelations, the blueprint for our exploitation, are yet to come. To truly comprehend the insidious rise of collective stupidity, we must first dissect the battlefield within the mind itself. Despite our comforting illusions of rationality, the brutal truth is that the human brain is an emotional engine, only occasionally guided by logic. We flatter ourselves into believing our decisions are forged in the crucible of fact, but the reality is far more convoluted, far more susceptible to manipulation. In his Nobel Prize-winning work, Thinking Fast and Slow, psychologist Daniel Kahneman unveiled the brain's dual operating system. System 1, which is fast, instinctive, automatic, and emotional, and System 2, which is slow, deliberate, analytical, and effortful. System 1 jumps to conclusions, makes snap judgments, and conserves precious mental energy. System 2, by contrast, demands sustained focus, critical evaluation, and a willingness to confront complexity. And here lies the ultimate vulnerability, the exploitation trap of the modern age. In our high-speed, perpetually on world, the vast majority of people are trapped in System 1 mode. There is simply no perceived time or more accurately, no will, to slow down and engage. System 2. So we default to heuristics, to superficial stereotypes, to mental shortcuts that feel instinctively right, but are, more often than not, spectacularly wrong. This isn't just fertile ground for mass manipulation. It's a meticulously tilled field. Politicians, marketers, media conglomerates, and even nation-states understand intimately how to exploit these cognitive shortcuts. They package complex geopolitical realities into simplistic, emotionally resonant binaries. Good versus evil, us versus them. They weaponize emotionally charged language to bypass our rational faculties entirely. They relentlessly prime us with repeated narratives, saturating our consciousness until we accept them as immutable truth, not because we've verified them, but because they have achieved the ultimate validation. They feel familiar. The danger escalates exponentially once we accept something as true. Our brains, with a terrifying loyalty, begin to defend that belief, regardless of contradictory evidence. This is the infamous confirmation bias, one of the most powerful and self-reinforcing cognitive traps known to humanity. Take a brutally honest moment to interrogate your own beliefs. How often do you actively seek out information or perspectives that fundamentally contradict your deeply held convictions? How often do you genuinely listen to an opposing argument, truly absorb its nuances, rather than merely biding your time, mentally rehearsing your counterpoint, waiting for your turn to speak? If you're honest, the answer is likely, not as often as I should. This isn't a moral failing, it's human nature. But it transforms into a devastating societal problem when we remain willfully unaware of its relentless grip, leaving us open to strategic disinformation campaigns that reinforce existing prejudices for political or economic gain. Another critical pillar of collective stupidity is the insidious phenomenon of groupthink, a psychological contagion where the overpowering desire for harmony, for belonging, for conformity within a group leads to wildly irrational, often catastrophic, decisions. Its devastating effects have been meticulously documented across a spectrum of human endeavors, from corporate collapses to historical atrocities, even to genocides. People silence their profoundest doubts, not for the sake of truth, but for the comforting illusion of unity. They prioritize manufactured consensus over inconvenient reality. The social psychologist Irving Janis, who coined the term, uncovered a chilling truth. Even highly intelligent, well-intentioned individuals can make catastrophic choices when they suppress dissent and avoid rigorous critical evaluation. Why? Because challenging the collective feels existentially unsafe. Because to go against the grain, to stand apart from the tribe, demands far more than mere intelligence. It demands an almost superhuman degree of integrity and courage. It demands a willingness to face potential ostracism, to confront the primal fear of social death, a fear that Machiavelli understood perfectly could be leveraged for control. And yet, the brutal lessons of history scream a different narrative. Genuine progress, every single leap forward in human understanding and civilization, has invariably sprung from the minds of those who dared to think differently, to defy the prevailing wisdom. Galileo, Darwin, Nietzsche, Martin Luther King Jr. These giants were ridiculed, rejected, and viciously attacked for their revolutionary ideas. But they thought anyway. They spoke anyway. Their unwavering willingness to challenge the suffocating collective ignorance of their time quite literally reshaped the world we inhabit today. But make no mistake, for you, personally, there is a profound, often excruciating, cost to thinking critically in a society that actively punishes doubt. It is an act of intellectual rebellion, a solitary defiance against the digital current. You risk being fundamentally misunderstood, openly ostracized, even viscerally hated. Yet, you also gain something immeasurably more valuable: piercing clarity, an unshakable self-respect, and the quiet, unassailable power that blossoms from knowing with absolute certainty that your beliefs are authentically yours, forged in the fires of inquiry, not passively programmed into your consciousness by external forces. This is the true power, a Machiavellian strength of self-mastery, enabling you to navigate the treacherous currents of geopolitics and economics with a strategic advantage. Let's bring this harsh mirror closer to our own faces. Why do so many of us feel a pervasive sense of being lost, anxious, or profoundly unfulfilled, even as we possess access to more information and more sophisticated technology than any generation before us? The answer lies not in what we have acquired, but in what we have tragically lost. And one of the greatest casualties is the sacred habit of inner dialogue, the profound ability to sit with a perplexing question, to patiently explore its multifaceted dimensions, and to allow a genuine, unvarnished truth to slowly emerge through rigorous, unflinching reflection. We have outsourced our most fundamental human capacity for thought to machines, to curated media, to the fleeting whims of public opinion. But no algorithm, however sophisticated, can tell you what is true for you. No trending topic can ever replace the quiet, insistent whisper of your inner voice. And no mass movement, however fervent, can ever substitute for the profound, hard-won certainty of a meticulously examined belief. So, what then is our strategic response? We begin by cultivating relentless awareness, awareness of our own ingrained mental habits, awareness of the ideological biases inherent in the information sources we consume, and, most crucially, awareness of the precise moments when we are truly thinking versus when we are merely reacting to external stimuli. One potent liberating practice is metacognition, the radical act of thinking about our own thinking. Ask yourself, what specific forces are influencing my opinion right now? Am I genuinely open to the terrifying possibility of being wrong? Am I truly engaging with this complex idea, or am I passively absorbing it like a digital sponge? Another is the deliberate, arduous practice of dialectical thinking, the almost paradoxical ability to hold two fiercely opposing ideas in tension simultaneously, dissecting and exploring them without immediately choosing sides. This is not mere intellectual flexibility. It is a profound display of mental strength, a strategic maneuver that allows you to transcend simplistic binaries, to move beyond the primitive us versus them mentality, and into the fertile, often uncomfortable, realm where true understanding is born. The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti eloquently stated, "To understand the immeasurable, the mind must be extraordinarily quiet, still." That profound stillness, so tragically rare in our hyperstimulated age, is precisely where the embryonic seeds of genuine wisdom begin to germinate. But let us also speak with brutal frankness. Critical thinking is not a sudden epiphany. It is a relentless, lifelong discipline. It demands deep reading, not just scanning headlines, but consuming entire books, dense arguments, and nuanced philosophical treatises. It requires deep listening, not just to those who echo your own beliefs, but, most critically, to those whose perspectives you find challenging, even repulsive. It requires an unwavering humility, the kind that embraces uncertainty, that understands doubt as an integral, inescapable part of the path to knowledge. And above all, it demands a ruthless, uncompromising rejection of intellectual laziness. If something sounds too good to be true, it almost certainly is. If everyone around you, without exception, believes something without question, that is your unequivocal cue to pause, not to blindly rebel, but to investigate with an almost forensic honesty. In a time when ignorance roars with unearned confidence, and competence is often mistaken for mere bravado, thinking deeply is not merely a personal virtue. It is a profound public service, a strategic necessity, because the future of any society, its very survival, depends not on the sheer volume of its opinions, but on the enduring quality of its thought. And the most powerful, most transformative change begins not with mass movements or popular uprisings, but with a solitary individual who, in a world gone mad, chooses the radical act of thinking clearly. In the final, harrowing descent into the core of this crisis, we will unmask the most important truth of all, the deep, dark secret that explains why critical thinking is not merely fading, but is being actively suppressed. This isn't about faulty systems or technological distractions alone. It's about a foundational, almost spiritual terror. What you are about to hear could irrevocably alter your perception of your own mind, your most cherished relationships, and your true, challenging role in shaping a world spiraling into manufactured ignorance. At the very heart of this entire societal malaise, beneath the cacophony of digital noise, the crumbling institutions, and the toxic polarization, lies something far more insidious, a truth so raw it often feels unbearable. The real, unspoken reason critical thinking is disappearing is not because people are inherently incapable of it. It is because they are profoundly, existentially afraid of what it might reveal. To genuinely think critically is to risk everything that gives us psychological safety: our carefully constructed identity, our comforting beliefs, our secure place within our chosen tribe. And for the vast majority, these things, these illusions of stability, are far too precious, far too intertwined with self-worth, to ever submit to the cold, unforgiving light of questioning. We live in an epoch where identity has ascended to the status of the sacred. People define their very essence by their opinions, their affiliations, their ideologies. To challenge an idea, even respectfully, is no longer perceived as an intellectual engagement. It is immediately interpreted as a brutal, personal attack. This, precisely, is the big lie, the most potent illusion meticulously crafted to destroy authentic thought, the insidious notion that you are your ideas. But this is the ultimate deception, a psychological cage. You are not your political party. You are not your religious dogma. You are not your social group, your online echo chamber, or the aggregate of your trending opinions. You are, at your core, a human being, endowed with the astonishing capacity to evolve, to learn, and to fundamentally change. And that profound, often terrifying, journey of evolution begins the precise moment you detach your intrinsic worth, your very sense of self, from your current, transient beliefs. This separation is not just intellectual, it is a radical act of liberation, a strategic disentanglement that allows you to move with greater agility in a world of shifting narratives. The ultimate, most pivotal truth to grasp is this: critical thinking is not merely an intellectual skill. It is, at its deepest level, a spiritual act. It is the audacious commitment to honor truth above the seductive comfort of illusion, to prioritize genuine growth over the false security of certainty, and to choose authentic freedom over the fleeting validation of approval. It is the quiet, defiant decision to live with your eyes wide open, even when the harsh light of reality burns, even when it reveals uncomfortable truths about yourself and the world. Because once you embark on this perilous journey of critical thought, you begin to see, with terrifying clarity, the intricate structures of control that surround you, the sophisticated systems of manipulation, the subtle algorithms of behavioral engineering, the carefully constructed masks people wear to conceal their true intentions, and even the masks you yourself have worn. And it can be overwhelming. It can be profoundly painful, but it is, fundamentally, real. And reality, however uncomfortable, however brutal, is the only bedrock upon which genuine freedom can ever be built. Anything less is a prison. This clarity is your strategic advantage, allowing you to see opportunities and threats others miss. The renowned philosopher and psychologist Carl Jung, with his profound understanding of the human psyche, once famously declared, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And yet, facing our inner world, confronting our unconscious motives, dissecting our inherited beliefs, exposing our ingrained cognitive traps, this is the very essence of true critical thinking. Critical thinking is not just about dissecting the external world with cold logic. It is a profound, often excruciating, internal excavation. It is about asking the terrifyingly honest question, why do I believe what I believe? Where did this idea truly originate within me? What parts of my ego, what cherished comforts, are absolutely terrified to let go of this conviction? When you dare to ask those questions with unvarnished honesty, a new dimension of existence unfurls before you. Not just a world of inert knowledge, but a boundless landscape of profound wisdom. This self-knowledge is the ultimate strategic asset, as it inoculates you against external manipulation and allows for true self-determination, a principle Machiavelli admired in the truly powerful. And wisdom, make no mistake, is precisely what our society is starving for, actively denying itself. In a culture addicted to the sugar rush of quick answers, wisdom extends a challenging invitation to deeper, more complex questions. In a system meticulously constructed on the foundation of manufactured noise, wisdom offers the profound, subversive power of silence. In an era of suffocating mass conformity, wisdom dares, defiantly, to be free. This is your personal invitation, not merely to think, but to wake up, to cease living as an unwitting product of your environment, a passive consumer of pre-programmed narratives, and to begin the formidable, exhilarating task of becoming the true architect of your own mind. Because no school, no political system, no social media platform, however well-intentioned or manipulative, will ever undertake this sacred responsibility for you. The burden and the glory is yours alone. And when you courageously rise to this challenge, something truly extraordinary, something transformative, begins to unfold. You begin to perceive with unclouded clarity. You begin to experience, perhaps for the first time, what it truly feels like to live in profound alignment with truth. Not a borrowed truth, not a popular truth, not a politically expedient truth, but your own hard-earned, meticulously verified truth. You begin to instantly recognize, with an almost predatory intuition, when manipulation is being cunningly deployed against you, whether in economic policy, trade negotiations, or geopolitical narratives. You start to effortlessly discern the crucial difference between genuine information and insidious propaganda, between authentic education and cynical indoctrination, between meaningful human connection and performative, transactional interaction. And most crucially, you begin to lead, not with empty noise, not with inflated ego, but with profound depth, with quiet authority. You become, in the truest sense, a light in a rapidly darkening room, a voice of calm, unwavering reason in a storm of manufactured outrage, a grounded, strategic thinker in a world populated by feverish reactionaries. This is what the world, teetering on the precipice of intellectual collapse, desperately needs now more than ever. Not louder voices shouting into the void, not sharper, more aggressive arguments fueling endless division, but deeper, more resilient minds. Minds that are not afraid to sit patiently in the excruciating discomfort of complexity. Minds that are willing, with genuine humility, to declare, I don't know, but I am fiercely committed to learning. Minds that are no longer seeking to win ephemeral debates, but to profoundly understand the brutal, unvarnished reality of existence. If your ambition is to truly change the world, to escape the exploitation trap and wield genuine influence, you must begin by changing the very way you think. Not because it's easy, it's demonstrably the hardest path. Not because it's popular, it will inevitably make you an outlier, a dissident, a strategic anomaly, but because it is, unequivocally, right. The pervasive rise of collective stupidity is not some inexplicable cosmic event. It is a chilling symptom, a symptom of deeply entrenched fear, fear of uncertainty, fear of ostracism, fear of the unknown, a symptom of profound fatigue, a world utterly exhausted by relentless information overload and engineered conflict, a symptom of a society too meticulously distracted, too relentlessly entertained, to ever dare look inward, to ever truly examine its own mental state. But every single act of thinking clearly, every solitary moment of genuine reflection, pushes back with defiant force against that overwhelming tide. Every time you consciously pause to reflect, to genuinely process information, instead of reflexively reacting to it, you reclaim a sliver of your precious mental sovereignty. Every time you ask a probing, inconvenient question, instead of passively assuming the pre-packaged answer, you sharpen your intellectual sword. Every time you choose the terrifying clarity of truth over the seductive comfort of illusion, you reclaim your inherent, formidable power. This is the Machiavellian secret to true personal and strategic power, not to control others, but to first master yourself, to refuse to be controlled. This internal mastery provides a foundation for navigating complex geopolitical and economic landscapes, allowing you to identify leverage points and resist manipulation. So, as we conclude this harrowing journey into the depths of manufactured ignorance and the potential for radical liberation, remember the single most revolutionary act you can undertake in this precise moment. It is not to shout louder than the mob, not to conform to the prevailing dogma, and certainly not to thoughtlessly repeat the slogans handed to you. It is with quiet defiance to think. Let the others sleepwalk through their days, hypnotized by the flickering screens, lulled by the empty promises of consensus. Let them eagerly trade their profound intellectual freedom for the fleeting, superficial validation of likes and shares. But not you. You are awake now. And once you awaken, truly awaken to the mechanisms of control and the power of independent thought, you can never, truly, go back. The world, once seen through the murky lens of manufactured consent, is now revealed in its stark, complex, and often brutal reality. This awakening is not a burden, it is a weapon. It is the key to strategic insight, to discerning genuine opportunity amidst the noise, to recognizing the true vulnerabilities of the systems that seek to control you, be they political, economic, or cultural. If this uncompromising message has resonated with the dormant rebel within you, then share it. Not because it's trending, not because it's popular, but because it is profoundly, urgently necessary. Leave a comment, not with a facile agreement, but with your raw reflections, your gnawing doubts, your hard-won insights. Because critical thinking doesn't blossom in sterile silence, it flourishes in the fiery crucible of genuine, challenging dialogue. And if you're still with me, if you've journeyed this far into the uncomfortable truths, know this: you are absolutely not alone. There is a quiet, burgeoning revolution unfolding, a movement not of deafening noise or performative outrage, but of awakened minds, of profound awareness. And it begins, profoundly, every single time one individual chooses to ask the harder, more inconvenient question. Let that courageous, strategic individual be you. Stay curious, stay relentlessly awake, and above all, keep thinking, for in this act lies your ultimate power and freedom.